being the observer of what you are. Then, in regards to the level of doing things, this means find our eyes, the inner realms. My relationship with imagination is that it is not, the mind is not an object to me, so in some sense there is nothing to do. But sometimes when you go into states of being, you recognize how things are happening. Now let's say there's a state of inner reception where the human being, in regards to what happens, what moves, there is an influence. So let me say it like this: if you get the thought that you are a marathon runner, if you get the thought of a marathon runner, it's a very different thing than realizing you are the marathon runner. So there is something of the intensity of the realism of an idea or a concept in our experience. That's noteworthy. The physical room cannot be avoided. When a person closes their eyes, 1/5 of reality is gone, and that 1/5 creates a space, and in that space the human being perceives imagery. So far I have articulated the inner realms as if we're an antenna and there's rivers of thoughts. Thoughts are not like objects that collide with us, They are more like they're already there and they're moving, and when we recognize it, the thought has a meaning to us, has a reality to us. An example of this would be like, let's say there's a family at a dinner table, and they're eating dinner, and suddenly one person runs inside and says, "Hey, there's fireworks, next level fireworks outside." That information, the moment it is shared, becomes real, and every family member at the dinner table, runs outside to get a glimpse of the fireworks. What I mean is that in the inner realms, thoughts come and go. Thoughts can appear out of nowhere. They can be evoked by the outer realms, or they can be evoked by the inner realms. In the inner realms, how thoughts just arise and just endlessly the person tunes into them is through a question. My experience of information behind my eyes is that there is a question, and that question makes the person want to keep looking at whatever they're looking at. And as they go, so I'll give you an example. Right now, in the topic I've said, scouting the inner realms. If I ask myself, what is scouting? Or what is the inner realms? My attention goes to a certain thought. So let's say for scouting, when I think of the word scouting, for example, I don't know, automatically my mind goes to this thought of the Night's Watch, from Game of Thrones, where they sent a scout beyond the wall, right? So it was as if the word scouting, by looking at that, the attention teleported me to the memory or most nearby image I have of it. Then when I think about the Night's Watch, I think about what would that scout in the Night's Watch do, and then suddenly from that inner, so what it is I'll tell you what I think this is a good way to explain it. So here, let me try again. I'm saying that let's take the word scouting, and let's say somebody hears this word, or me. Let's say I hear this word. what happens is in my inner realms, that means it doesn't matter if my eyes are open or closed, it is still happening to my awareness. In my inner realms, the attention goes to the Night's Watch in Game of Thrones, which I mentioned. The concept of a scout takes me there in my inner realms. Then, the moment I have gone there in my inner realms, where I'm envisioning a Game of Thrones scene where Jon Snow is going beyond the Night's Watch, and at the same time, when I think about suddenly, like when I look at the imagery of the teleported to thought, that means I heard the word scouting, then I teleported to the concept of the Night's Watch, you know, that scene from the Night's Watch in my inner realms. Now in that scene, I see snow and I see a giant wall, right? Right now as I'm speaking, my eyes are closed. So when I see that wall, let's say the giant wall from Game of Thrones, suddenly my attention goes to the Great Wall of China, for example, another giant wall. And then from there to the Berlin Wall. So what I'm saying is, it's as if we are teleporting through films. And the moment we get into an inner simulation, you know, let's say somebody says apple and you envision a time where you saw an apple on the ground or on a tree. Then the moment you envision an apple on the ground or a tree, you envision a tree, then your attention goes to the tree. So do you see, just by having the curiosity to know, to trying to understand what's going on, the mind has to endlessly, in some sense, jump, eventually until the jumper is discovered. The jumper within, which in Vedic thought it is the Atman. So what I'm doing is, really in these talks, is that I am teleporting from my inner realms. I share a concept, that concept leads to somewhere else, and then I teleport into that image. And then I share that image, and then I teleport, and it's as if this jumping, when let's say someone's jumping from rocks to get to the other side of a river. I did this as a kid. And when I was jumping on those rocks, it's as if one of your feet are on one rock, and the moment you know you have enough stability and the rock beneath your feet is not going to shake and move, your right foot jumps to the other one. So as if one foot grounded in the past reality, then the other foot grounded in the new reality, then the foot from the past reality goes on. So there's a relationship of from, you know what it is? It's like I'm going from A to B, and as I go to A to B, suddenly B has a correlation to the letter D, imagine. And then from D, I go to the correlation to the letter Z or something. I'm saying there's in the outer realms, sure, things go chronologically, consecutively, something has to happen, then the next thing has to happen, then the next thing. But in the inner realms, because it is like a space where there's like screens of image, right? One's attention can instantly go from one inner realm environment and landscape to another. Another metaphor I can use to explain what is going on in the inner realms, at least in my experience, it's like a train passing by. No, I'll tell you. What it is that image, language. Okay, so think of it this way. A person's ears hear a sound. This sound represents a certain symbolism, a sort of word or a concept. That concept can only be animated if there is content to it, which means image. So if I say the word apple, unless the person sees an image behind their eyes to that, they in some sense are just accessing the symbolic value of that sound. Augustine of Hippo says, "Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it finds its rest in thee." And if the God was an archetype for the whole system, unless we have understood the whole system, we are not free. The whole system of our perception, whatever is going on with the human body, whatever is going on with what we consider as the human mind, and even additional going-ons of the witness. There is a watcher in the moment. Every consciousness, every moment of consciousness has a reference. That reference is where the sight is beginning. You know what it is? It's as if our brains are film projectors. But they're projecting the film in a spherical way, and we are inside the film. And it's only when the brain, in some sense, finds a calmness, finds a serenity, that in some sense, ideological shaped life kind of calms down. That means we calm down, or poetically, we come down from our beliefs and enter the real world. When it comes to the inner realms, I use the term inner realms simply because I want a cultural significance to happen. I want it to have a cultural significance where in the educational system we're studying inner realm phenomena and we're studying outer realm phenomena. And everything that is going on in the inner realms and outer realms, Einstein has this quote about this, where he says it's like the inspiration of what you need to do in this life. Here's the quote. I'm going to read it for the audience. Albert Einstein, he says, "From the standpoint of daily life, however, there is one thing we do know, that we are here for the sake of each other, above all for those upon whose smile and well-being our own happiness depends, and also for the countless unknown souls with whose fate we are connected by a bond of sympathy. Many times a day I realize how much my own outer and inner life is built upon the labors of my fellow men, both living and dead, and how earnestly I must exert myself in order to give in return as much as I have received." You know, in front of our eyes, in our outer life, we are the created. Behind our eyes, in our inner life, we are the creator. And when I use the concept creator, I don't mean it in the religious sense. I mean it in the sense that there is a light in the room, and that light in the room is attracting to itself the meaning of life, or something in the inner realms is making the outer realms move, so there is a new extraction of both a new interpretation or review of the inner realms and the outer. When right now, I would say, as I'm speaking right now, this is a sort of process where both are engaged. My outer realms are moving in the sense that I'm a breathing entity, you know, and my biological system moving and functioning when I make noise or when I speak. And in regards to my inner realms, it's like what is moving the moment. That means unless the person realizes that in utter solitude they are the mover of the life that they're aware of, unless one is acquainted with that mover, the inner realms probably doesn't have a value. You know, it's as if a person wondered what free will was, but then realized free will is not an image. It is strangely an opportunity of directed change, but it's not an image. Many traditions have a relationship with the unknown components of their intelligence. The Sufi tradition, there were these whirling dervishes. This is more from, the eastern part of the world. And Sufism is, in a strange way, just like how we have Gnosticism being a spiritual, kind of spiritual denomination of Christianity. We have Sufism being a sort of spiritual amplification and denomination of Islam, right? And in the monotheistic religions, there's something that people of any spiritual context can relate to, is that the concept of the ultimate is brought, right? So there is something ultimately happening here. Man, as by the nature of being temporary, cannot access the ultimate. What options is left for him? The species has two options pretty much. Either we change the world in the outer realms, or we change ourselves in the inner realms. And these are both effort based. And if somebody, let's say, is super, super relaxed human being, and the human being's like, I'm gonna live life, but I'm gonna live it effortlessly. This kind of person, through inaction, will begin noticing the spirit of action. And what it means is that just like a person who goes into a new environment, they can't just be the expression in that new environment. They have to watch how the environment, in some sense, has come to be, and what is the spirit of the environment. This is something I personally care about. I don't know if other people care about, but anywhere, whether I'm having a conversation with someone or anywhere where I am, where there is people, I just look at people and I wonder what moves them, what moves us. And to me, it's like time is like a game already played and we're playing it for the second time. This world to me doesn't feel new, strangely. And I have wondered why it doesn't feel new, because in some sense there is nothing to it. That means it is just shape, color, and distance. Shape, color, and space. That means my whole life, this lifetime I have lived, has been just staring at shape, color, and space where it's all happening, and there has only been the human intelligence. Like, if we didn't have the concept of a soul, then we would have truly locked ourselves out of the mysteries of the realm. And that's why I'm sometimes, not that I'm saying atheism should entertain the idea of the soul, but I'm just saying that if we are multidimensional, death in one dimension is not the end. It is rather a sort of turbulence of how energy is being piloted. Don't think I'm giving this talk as if I feel I have figured everything out. When it comes to the inner realms, I just know I have watched how my thoughts occur. And what we call thoughts are inner events. The inner events can be connected. You can teleport out of them any second. That means in the outer realms, teleportation not possible yet. In the inner realms, it has been possible the moment somebody could share a new idea. It's like our eyes are designed to see one world, but it's like our ears are designed to see that one world in different ways. In my inner realms, there has been, so far I've established that, like, in front of our eyes, outer realms, behind our eyes, inner realms. Now, something, not that it's like new, I'm saying philosophers and mystics from the beginning of time knew that there was an inner space. So, what that means is, let's say I'm looking at a, believe it or not, a giant bottle of orange juice right now. Don't judge me, people, you know. I'm looking at this bottle of orange juice. And so there is a distance. There is a distance from the object and my eyes, and light is hitting this object and entering my eyes. So that's the outer space, the distance between any object and the biological eyes. That's a reference. Now, if I was to close my eyes and I'm still visualizing like this orange juice in front of me, and now that is the inner. What that means is, even if you close your eyes, there is a watcher of some shape, of some design. This is the peculiar thing about imagination, and this is what the world has forgotten, that there has been an additional dimension to our intelligence. The analytical philosophers tried to silence the continental philosophers, but because it is our nature, it is our birthright to be a multidimensional being, it cannot be hidden. So the most fascinating thing has happened where no spiritual person really needs to share a spiritual idea, because it isn't. Because reality is being a transcendental object, you know? And I find Terence McKenna, of course, he says there's an attractor at the end of time, but for me, when I hear the idea of the transcendental object at the end of time, we are the object, and the moment we go beyond time, we have transcended. And a species beyond time would have to have an immortal view on energy. Okay, interesting question, guys, in the chat section. The best thing I could say about mindfulness is a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh as a response to Aziz's comment in the chat section. Mindfulness, the best thing you can know about it is this, from a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, this Vietnamese Zen master. And he says, smile, breathe, and go slowly. That is the algorithm. Smile, breathe, and go slowly in whatever you do in this life, you know. And if there's, you know, young people who have to do presentations, you know, and are nervous, just remember this: smile, breathe, and go slowly. The nature of the world is to go forth. To, in some sense, not going forth is like not honoring the nature of the universe. Whatever happens, we just go forth, and the eyes, in some sense, perceive more, and they have more piloting ability. You know, because I was raised, you know, semi-religious, that means there were religious ideas around when I was young, and semi-spiritual, which was in some sense the fringe, rebellious notion of religion, you know. There is something about spirituality and religion where in some countries, I'll tell you something bizarre, Iran is a theocratical society, and there was a time in Iran's history that the moment a sort of religious constitution arose, in some sense any ideological system against the religious narrative is dismissed. So you know what it is? It's as if like some countries, they are not just governing citizens. They are trying to govern the inner realms of the citizen, to tell the citizen what to think, to tell the citizen what to do, rather than the citizen being so advanced that it appreciates the efficiency of the laws of the environment and then functions in accordance to it. You know, the world is becoming a strange nightmare of a not strange nightmare, but becoming this strange, angry display of a teenager. You know, that means ideological systems will meet the void, and because they don't know what to do, their last identification would be to fight another ideological system. You know, because there are some states of mind and perception where they go beyond the language threshold. And when they go beyond the language threshold, it's going to be a challenge for our humanism. So pretty much I'm saying either new concepts have to arrive on the surface of the planet, or things have to be done in ways where they're extensions or novelties. So you can say there's a type of explorer that just stumbles into a new world. Think of like that Narnia narrative, and then imagine there's a type of person who notices something mysterious, like a string pulls the string and the string is taking them to another dimension. It's all to some degree display. And you know, it's like trying to be an object and surviving, and trying to be a subject and evolving, transcending. It's like in the middle of this life, the watcher is like, you know, it's like there's a presence of awareness within us that in some sense has done nothing from the beginning of life. All that it has been is the conscious activation point. So you can say our life is a state of being. I mean, or I could say it, life is a state of being, and our life, which we're an individual actor in, is like the state of doing. Pretty much I'm considering verbs and nouns to be different dimensions. What can I say? We are the mystery of the mystery. Kabir, this yogi, he asked one of his disciples, you know, he was a very savage man. Like, the yogic mind is open to a level of savageness. I would say that the common mind isn't. You know, like the yogis could fast for a long time. They could just be in isolation for a long time, trusting their own life force, you know, rather than a dependency on the outer. The yogic mind, unlike, I would say, any other sort of mindset or attitude, had the actual desire of ultimate liberation. I mean, that concept is being, you know, unfortunately forgotten in the proper way. People think freedom is inside time. But time is in some sense the commander. When I look at all the moments in my life where there has been a sort of transition, and if we can define change as just an awareness of how something starts and it ends, any moment in my life where there has been an end, there has been self-transformation. You know, and people are going around saying, you know, that person had an ego, that other person had an ego. You know, these are all just surfboards. You know what it is? It's as if the universal intelligence movement, the universal event, is unknown waters, these unknown waves. And when we wake up, of course, our body is like, sure, your body is changes less than your mind. But I would say It's as if, imagine a surfer, someone surfing the waves, jumping in the air, changing the surfboard, jumping into the air, bringing another surfboard. Every day we wake up, that notion of a new self is another surfboard, you know, responding to the forces of nature that meet our eyes. You know how I would say a huge sign of inner extinction will arise? Like, what would be a huge sign of inner extinction? That means the idea of the human being is dying before the body of the human being. And when I say dying, that means if we all become cruel behind our eyes, we have descended into animalhood, and animalhood on a very savage level is dehumanized. You know, seldom this is said, but it's a responsibility to be human, regardless of whatever background narrative to your essence you see. And really what scouting the inner realms means, really I'm just saying, when in this life, whoever you are listening, when in this life will you attempt to be responsible for your whole existential experience? That is really it. That means sometimes I just want to tell people, even though I'm trying to explain the concept of meditation, because in today's society the idea is all entangled, but really on some level I just want to say, human beings, forget every idea, and for a moment in stillness and silence, as if you just teleported into manifestation, try to figure out everything. And I feel that is the best education, you know, because education doesn't end. You know, there's some people who, you know, they have the mentality, you know, seek the highest education, seek the highest improvement, but in an infinite system, what are you seeking? You know, that means it's like in educational systems, there is a graduation, let's say for high school, grade 12, you know, and then all the years you got to go to get your university degree. So there is a graduation, you know, a graduation ceremony. But when it comes to reality and being a multidimensional being and there being things to teach, this world is infinite. We pretty much are existing, and we are putting words to the existence, and we're writing these words in classrooms for children to write them down too, so somehow it gets etched into their inner realms. But the only way is if the person finds a question, macrocosmic question, will enlighten the small identity. That means you have to attempt in your psychology, anybody, or I'll say it like this, if you have an inferiority complex as a person, you must seek universal perception. That means you got to seek a context of the world that is universal. You got to stop the thinking in the micro, you know. And let's say you have a superiority complex. You're a person who feels like they're being a god right now. You know, there's some people, I would say billionaires, kind of very rich billionaires, they're like, you know, they pretty much feel like a god in the outer realms. But in their inner realms, people's actions echo. And so really it's the type of life you live and the type of memories one generates. You know, in any moment, if one knows they should do something and they don't do it, that suffering automatically comes in the future. And this is why I'm saying we are pilots. So we're scouting the inner realms like a drone, as if our attention, you know, it's funny, in front of our eyes we gotta move in the world, but behind our eyes worlds move in us. And to be aware of the content your mind produces, that means imagine your mind was your business, okay? And you were the owner of this business, and you come into, you know, your company to see what's up. You want to know what is the production of your intelligence on this earth, you know? And then the only way you can be a good producer is by looking at the quality and what kind of way your mind is working, you know? For example, people who listen to me, they are seeing how the mind of another person is working. You know, when I listen to myself, I see how my mind, my mind is working. But here's the thing where when you get fascinated about your own eyes, there's a very important decision of how much throughout the day you want to live as the context, through a causal position of the context of the moment or the immediate concept. That means it's like, let's say something good happens, the person individualizes, yeah, I succeeded as an individual, you know. And let's say something bad happens, instead of the person feeling like an individual that has gone towards something bad, they just say, oh man, the universe is acting strange today, you know. as if completely pushing aside the inferiority of the individual, you know. It's this strange time where we can't, you know, compliment the world too much, because then it feels artificial, and we can't, you know, push the world too much, because then it feels inferior. So pretty much between the superior and inferior, the psychology of human beings are trying to, you know, explore their reality. You know, it's like closing your eyes and wondering how much of what you're perceiving is relevant to the human idea. One of my profoundest realizations was that energy and attention don't have to be anything. They don't have to do anything to be anything. That means if a person just stops doing whatever they're doing in this life, they have access to what they are. And if you can view what you are, you know, you're pretty much viewing your inner realms. That means the way we can have a relationship with our minds is to know, to look at what it is producing, and its production is the person looking at the mind. So if we were to discover the truth of the mind, we would discover a truth that is going on beyond the production of the mind. You know, the inner realms, anytime you close your eyes and you just listen, or you let the senses just naturally be received. Right now, like, my eyes are closed. Even though my eyes are closed, I feel the temperature of the moment, I feel the wind hitting me, I feel the weight of my body on this chair, I feel gravity. I feel the pressure of just, like, you know, my skeletal system, and the sensational, a person can experience these and the way I'm having access to all of this information is by not trying to be anything in the moment, to see what I am, and ultimately it's just an opening. That means it's like the meaning of life is life generating the meaning. Our eyes are like visitors to a world that has been here way before we have. I mean, how fascinating is that? And we have minds, and the way we know there's something going on with us that is not going on with any other species is because no other species other than the human being has built a tower. We have built infrastructure, and the infrastructure is not human. So I would strangely say that civilization is like, you know, a hybrid of an intelligence from the sky and an intelligence from Earth. So if we were to discover our relationship with the world, just like there's space and just like there's matter, there is a body and there is a mind. And the mind is the space of the body. So when the person closes, the mind is like a sense of self that is still trying to live in a body. You know, I don't know if anybody's ever experienced this, but sometimes when I sleep, I shouldn't say when I sleep, but sometimes in my life, there's been moments like where I've gone into bed and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna sleep now. And my goal was to just sleep. And in trying to sleep, my mind still remained so active that I got snapped out of my sleepiness. That's why Lao Tzu again says action through inaction. Some things, some dimensions open up the less we do, and some dimensions open up the more we do. That's the reality of the situation. You know, somebody behaves artificially in one part of the world, they succeed. Somebody behaves honestly in one part of the world, they succeed. Somebody behaves artificially in a part of the world, they fail. Somebody behaves, honestly, and they fail. Reality is just like a giant archive of possible design of, individualism. It's as if we don't realize us being human beings is like the planet speaking. We are the poetry of a rock in the middle of nowhere inspired by the light that has hit it. You see, when you think about life in a universal way, you don't have even a moment to even be an individual that suffers. The macrocosm's vastness makes us so insignificant that instantly our suffering is like forgotten. And really, that's my inspiration. I think the more a person gets older and they feel they're getting closer to exiting the realm, the more they have a universal perception, because the more they want to know what was happening before it all ended. And that's my, I find it's the mission of all of us, to build a system that successfully goes towards realizing what is happening here, rather than having an ideological Hunger Games, that pushes our civilization back a couple million years. So there has to be clarity. Clarity means you have an opportunity to see again, to see the depth, and everything has a depth, even the concept of love, all the poetry written about love, it's all about the hidden depth, of individuals that is found in one moment, or to be one moment. I would like to go into a quote tunnel of a man named Augustine of Hippo. And he's a very important philosopher. He's also known as Saint Augustine. And he's a theologian, philosopher, and the bishop of Hippo Regius in Numidia, Roman North Africa. So let's see his quotes. Hang in there, folks. All right. Saint Augustine says, faith is to believe what you do not see. The reward of this faith is to see what you believe. Saint Augustine says, the world is a book, and those who do not travel read only a page. Now imagine how much lack of traveling we've done in the inner realms, how little we have moved as minds on this earth compared to being just a body. The day that the children of the future generations open their eyes and they look at history and laugh because they have realized how not enough it has been, that would be a great future, where even though you may not be seeking an advanced civilization, your neighbor is. That would be a great future. Because everything has a challenge, everything has a light side and a dark side, And to quote a fictional character such as Yoda, he says, do or do not, there is no try. That means free will is just an elemental opportunity. What do we do with this intelligence is the bigger question. St. Augustine says, pray as though everything depended on God. Work as though everything depended on you. St. Augustine says resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. Holy shit, that's so true. Suffering can be self-inflicted, or I shouldn't say self-inflicted, can be self-allowed. That means imagine a person doesn't have to actually suffer about anything. They're like, philosophically speaking, but it is only in the authorization of acceptance. That means a person has failed if they just stop trying. Let's say you're a person, you seem like you have failed, but then you start, let's say, trying like 0.10%, okay? Let's say 0.09% you start trying, or 0.01%. Over a very long time, you will eventually get to your destination. And I think this is what, the true masters of art on this planet realized, that others did not. That if the effort towards something is endless, literally the person accepts that they will not stop walking in a certain direction, the ultimate conclusion of that direction is found. Right? So what it is it's like an exploration, and people go explore. Usually a lot of people, what they find first, they quickly think that's the only thing and they stop the exploration, right? But the deeper exploration, the concentration, as if it's like, if we say we're going to build an advanced civilization, then the whole life's context shifts to the achievement of those eyes, Because in the world, there will be, different kinds of human beings with different intents. Some wave of human beings are going to be born and they're going to feel the meaning of life is to be destructive. There's some human beings who are going to be born, they're going to feel the meaning of life is to be constructive. There's some who are going to feel like life doesn't have meaning, and there's others who are going to feel like the human beings who are going to be born who feel the whole thing has meaning, right? And we can't forget that civilization, that idea, is like a giant boat, where 8 billion human beings are in some sense on this boat. And the unknown waters that this boat is on is like the solar system, right? It's like our planet is moving in the solar system, in the greater universe. So imagine 8 billion people on a boat, then one side of the boat has started sinking, but the boat is so big that people on the other side don't even know that the boat has started sinking, right? And when I talk about an advanced civilization, you know what it is? It's as if like all of our future selves arrived instantly and they shifted the attention of humanity. It's very strange, right? Now when you say humanity, people are like, stop talking, But I'll tell you, humanity is really the greater ability of this. It's just the activation, the advance. How can I tell you? It's like at some point, the person in their lifetime has to go all out in something, right? We're like an energy, right? So this energy has to be used for something. And some give their allegiance to the past. Some people give their allegiance to the present, which means just being a dweller in an existence. And some give their allegiance to the future. Why? Because the future has seen what is happening right now. That means having a conversation with our future self, hypothetically, will be like having a conversation with your destiny. The unknown calls us. It's calling everyone. Not on their phones, I mean, even on their phones, sometimes it says unknown. but I mean it in a philosophical context. To find the hidden value of one's eyes and to realize sharing is the ultimate action. You know, on some level I'll say this may be a strange comment to make, but if there was another action that made more sense than communicating the inner realms right now, I would probably do it. But now, in this phase of humanity, the evolution of the mind and the advancement of the maturity of the mind, which means the more mature you are, the more dimensions to things you see, so the less your reaction, your response to the situation is reaction based. You know, like something freaks you out and you behave, rather than you, whatever you're seeing, observing it and realizing consciousness holds within itself, you know, wields understanding. And to understand something means to dispel fear from whatever you're looking at, right? And even though our world is giant and huge and endless skies and all that, but to attempt to understand it, it's as if we're wondering what we're standing under. You know, we're wondering why geometry through biology has provided a endlessly simulating kind of attention, right? So the brain is endlessly projecting films, and by the mere auditory sensation, its inner realms can change, you know. There has been times where I've been giving it in these talks, so what I do is I listen to music in the background, you know, music I like in the background, and some talks I play the music share the music with the audience. But when I play the music, suddenly there has been moments where I have been mid-speech trying to finish a sentence and the song has changed. And the moment the song has changed, it has been like also the rhythm to the song, to the speech has changed, you know? So this means upon recognizing and literally we, you know, establish the multidimensional perspective and everything, I don't know how to say it, but it's like the future cannot die by definition. The future is an eternal idea. It's an idea that in some sense can be applied till the end of time. It's just fascinating, guys, that science is telling us that we are an advanced evolutionary animal making sophisticated mouth noises, and these mouth noises translate as reality transference. So what is going on, guys, is actually if an extraterrestrial landed on Earth and had no clue what human languages were, it would just hear communication, it would just hear talking, it would just hear sound. That's all what I mean. It wouldn't see meaning. Meaning is something that we learn, you know. This is why Jordan Peterson was saying writing, speaking, and listening. I think this was it that he was saying. These are three of the most important things. I don't know if listening was one, but I'll tell you, listening is an art form. Anything you treat as an art form, eventually through practice you attain skill. You attain your own universe of experience with that idea. You cultivate your inner universe towards that idea. You know, in the future, I may, try to create this film where a time traveler comes to the past and tells the past to change, and the past gets angry at the time traveler. You know, imagine a time traveler from the future traveling back in time to change the past, but the time traveler comes to a yogi, and the yogi scolds the time traveler and says, how dare you not realize that every moment of life has its own fulfillment? its own geometry. For me, whatever happens in this life, I know that the change in the geometry of the world is what fascinates me. Your inner realms is like the person trying to access the photo album of their memories, realizing that it's just simulated space. So what I mean is that they did this experiment in this university, I don't know where it was, and they found this person, and then they went and found the cousin of the person, a cousin where that was like raised with that person, right, in their childhood or whatever. So they go, and the person has a scar on their left knee, imagine, and these researchers, these social scientists, they go and they bring the cousin and they create a lie. They say your cousin has a scratch on like his back, you know, like this is, I'm just trying to give you an example of what the social experiment was. The social scientists went to the cousin of the person, made up a false scar, and they said, it's like, do you remember that time you and your cousin were going, walking, and then your cousin fell and hurt his shoulder, and there's a scar there, do you remember that? And so often in this kind of deceptive experiment, they realized people didn't care about the accuracy of the information. People acted like, yeah, I remember a time where he fell. That means we are living in a world where we are so obsessed about having the sensory and the objective be reality, but we are being in some sense deceived. Not deceived in regards to only one storyline as the truth. I mean, it's not some sort of ridiculous like that. It's like I'm saying our eyes are not the whole universe, but to the idea of us, they are. St. Augustine has more to say. He says, since love grows within you, so beauty grows. For love is the beauty of the soul, and love means you have been able to look at life simply enough to care for it. That means you look at the simplicity of how a system happens. St. Augustine says, what then is time? If no one asks me, I know what it is. If I wish to explain it to him who asks, I do not know. St. Augustine says, men go abroad to wonder at the heights of mountains, at the huge waves of the sea, at the long courses of the rivers, at the vast compass of the ocean, at the circular motions of the stars, and they pass by themselves without wondering. They pass by themselves. That means this is how a person is, they're not being themselves if they feel their life is passing them by. St. Augustine says, God loves each of us as if there were only one of us. St. Augustine says it was pride that changed the angels into devils. It is humility that makes men as angels. And when he's saying pride, guys, pride means attachment to some image, right? You're proud of something, right? So it's a conditional concept, right? Now the issue is in Vedic and mystical thought, they are going beyond culture, beyond whatever culture cares about, to see the depth of one's eyes, right? Like the world has been fascinated with a deeper game, but the materialistic ideological systems have in some sense, taken the microphone. So, it's like we just have to build a compassionate network where important ideas can find refuge to then go through a filtering process of the most advanced ideas entering society first. That means we are a tribe that recently, let's say through the internet, cyberspace, apps like Clubhouse and social media, it's like we have connected. But there is so much that we don't know. So we have been a giant tribe where many of the tribe members have no idea who the other tribe members are. And we are all living beings here. I can't emphasize that when life moves, God is moving the world. Life is the divine. I mean, what is more divine than something moving in emptiness? Like, it doesn't get more divine than that. St. Augustine says, do you wish to rise? Begin by descending. You plan a tower that will pierce the clouds. Lay first the foundation of humility. That means if we are to build an advanced civilization, it must be from the most advanced state, and the most advanced state would be to be appreciative of what there is here now in the most simplest format, which in some sense St. Augustine says humility. That means humility is the foundation of, I would say, giant movements, St. Augustine says patience is the companion of wisdom. St. Augustine says love is the beauty of the soul. St. Augustine says, what does love look like? It has the hands to help others. It has the feet to hasten to the poor and needy. It has eyes to see misery and want. It has the ears to hear the sighs and sorrows of men. That is what love looks like. That what it means is like it's the greater vision. If for a moment you realized if nobody else existed, we would be alone here. It's a grand opportunity to be involved in a human event, and not a lot of people properly get connected to it, where I realize there's these giant like late night nostalgia communities of lo-fi audio listeners, There's an epic quote that says everybody is fighting a battle you cannot see. I would take that quote further. Everybody is living in a world that we can't see. And to truly have a multidimensional civilization, think about it, we have to not only be able to be compassionate with our own psychology, with the psychology of others, we have to be compassionate with the potential psychology of children on this planet who have not been born yet, but they will go on to become part of the leadership of the world. I am telling you, like, the best strategy in life so far I have found is to strangely be selfless when there is impact, and instead of calling it selfishness, be direction oriented. That's something so important, and I feel like the reason in human history they have said women are the fairer sex, the gentler sex. Why? Because in some sense the captain of the ship was very different, had a different mindset than the passenger in the ship. In ancient times, if we look at just how the family unit in some sense developed. In life, when we get tired, we want to be carried, When we're energetic, we want to do the carrying. And because we go through high energy at youth and, low energy at old age, somebody was saying it's like this hilarious thing where it's like when you're young, you don't have wisdom, you have energy. When you're old, you have wisdom, but you don't have the energy, So we have to literally input a lot of wisdom to the youth. So the youth, while they're energetic, can make decisions of importance in regards to reshaping neoculture. I have, just to tell you experiences of my own mind. So I'm this guy telling you stories of how I have observed my imagination move. There was a moment, I think it was in 2013, maybe at the end of 13 to 14, where for some time I had already been established into an intuition where I didn't care if there was a face behind the veil of the unknown. So I detached myself from the notion of there being treasure, strangely, in the background of the world, because in some sense I can access what I am familiar with. So I remember in 2013, I had a relationship with what I would, through metaphysics being a branch of philosophy, consider, as an internally intelligent object. And when I say an object, I mean a sort of personalized reality where your mind is animating a new personality construct, but it's not animating it in the biological body. So it's in some sense all those people who feel they're talking to, other beings or aliens and all this, sort of metaphysical psychology all around the world. That metaphysical psychology, instead of being truth, what you see, instead of being deceived by just, a higher antenna signal, because there's so much more you can go and see. So instead of being deceived, like, how would I say it? I would say it like this, that it was as if I was touching my own mind, as an inner event of its simulation. And so I can tell you, I have been conscious in moments where I have just stopped doing anything, whatever karma I've had in that moment, I've just stopped doing anything. And then the presence of the watcher, once it's unconditionally remembered, the being is untouchable. So what that means is I eject my personality out of a plane of existence that in the inner realms is way more prone to turbulence and change. But anyways, it was a relationship with an intelligent internal object. It personalized in accordance to how much personality I had. That means it's like only when people have a question, there is something mysterious to give it an answer to. Do you see what I mean? So unless there was the human inspiration to see what it is, there would be no other feedback. And seldom is this said, but information has to be walked to. One can have a relationship with the inner realms. I can visualize pretty much any shape and even three-dimensional objects while my eyes are open and I'm looking at, right now I'm looking at my balcony and I can totally see the whole balcony having a neon glow, even though it doesn't, right? But the inner realms allow to permit an overlay that is getting closer to the realism that doesn't have that overlay, if that makes sense. But really, something that is beyond the senses has no obligation to make sense, That's why I coined the term the language version. Because truth is as limited as we are. Truth is as limitless as we can, consider. Like there was a person, I think it was Plato. I don't know if it was Plato or Aristotle, one of these guys. They had a quote. There was this quote from Greek philosophy, and the quote was that if other animals became conscious, their god would be seen through their shape. So if dolphins became conscious, they would have a dolphin god and they would have a dolphin prophetic figure. If a bird suddenly became conscious, it would have a bird god, sort of this notion that we are using the language accessible to portray another dimension of an event. And for me, I think religion was just training. I think it was the training. It was literally how a blacksmith hits a sword with a hammer to straighten it out. Sometimes I feel the events of history have all just been like nature trying to bring forth the highest caliber level of human beings. Just usher in the new. Because the past has already lived. And if past ideology occupies the present mind, then it's as if the present doesn't exist. So if a person tries to live like the past, they actually have accepted their own non-existence and they're letting the past exist, right? So we have to come to, we have to acknowledge the battlefield, of our psychology. And I have poetically termed this the language wars. That means in my youth, even up until this moment, every day I wake up, it's not that life is something, it's that what animates becomes the information that directly shapes the thought. So it's as if every day I am being a new angle of how I am being on this planet. And I'm saying when there is this sort of possibility of novelty, if you notice, fear comes from the past. If a person has no reference, like let's say there's a dragon and a person's never seen a dragon, like poetically, kind of like hypothetically, like shout fire into the air, a person may not be afraid of a dragon. So in some sense, the person will be oblivious until the dragon roars, and then the new reality enters. And the past idea, the past fear, it's like it changes. The psychology changes. Through the introduction of new experiential reality. The poet Rumi says, out beyond ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a place. I will meet you there. That means there are states of being that go beyond right and wrong. There is a way we can live on this earth where we are a sort of singular witness through a dualistic lens of an infinite realm inside the void. And I think that's I feel like that statement will do it, You're alive once in this format with this sort of brain. Whoever you are with this sort of DNA and genetics, there's so many mysteries in the world that everybody should feel free exploring everything, And we should treat ourselves like performers until the advanced civilization comes. Imagine in the future an extraterrestrial lands on Earth and just wants to talk to the philosophers of the planet, and all the philosophers on the planet gather around and they're like, no way an alien wants to take philosophy seriously. They're all like crying with joy, but also kind of concerned, right? And imagine this extraterrestrial comes into this hall of all the philosophers from the planet, important philosophers, contributors, and then what happens is all the philosophers are just waiting, and the philosophers all, before the extraterrestrial comes, agree to, like a chess game, watch the extraterrestrial make the first chess move and then respond, And so the extraterrestrial comes in, and one philosopher, let's say, can't hold it in, and one philosopher just asks the alien, why are you here, And the extraterrestrial is there, and all the other philosophers are like, buddy, you couldn't keep your mouth shut. And so the extraterrestrial smiles, breathes, and very slowly, the extraterrestrial says, I am here to become a philosopher, not to invade Earth. Not to in some sense. So imagine the first extraterrestrial that is a citizen of the advanced humanity in the future that becomes the first dehumanized extraterrestrial philosopher on human psychology. And can you imagine extraterrestrials like, in the future kind of giving live streams, giving podcasts on their psychology from another planet? Like, that shit would be next level, right? And the future is something where if we can see something to it, we have to cherish that as if it is the divinity, as if it is the divine sign, And guys, I understand listeners may be concerned about my coughs. It's I would blame the factories that are putting pollution into the air. That means it's as if the problem is way bigger than an individual. It's as if like. Sorry guys, I'm human. If you want to hear an android speak, then you'll hear perfect talk. But the human dimension means we accept whatever we have an ability for naturally. That means it's as if every person, their inner realm, is piloting their relationship with the outer realms. Again, an attempt at the final comments for this episode. I'll say, just to sum it up, imagine in the future. This is the easiest way to talk about it, so people, so my freedom to talk about the idea it can be there. So imagine in the future, children are born, and we have this concept of the educational system advanced to a point where when young children ask their family, why are we here? What are we all doing here? The family, in some sense, shares a global narrative and shares 4 possibilities of vision. Do you know? And in some sense, all human beings in the future will have a freedom to walk towards emptiness. They will have a freedom to walk towards oneness, collective mindhood, or the liberty of the collective mind is also a crucial factor, right? Then any being has a freedom to be a dualistic entity. You can ride the waves of chaos in order to the end of time as a personality, or you have an ability to be infinite. What that means is it's all about vision. You know, guys, I'll tell you, there is something about this concept of Carl Jung's Jungian shadow that has to be very quickly confronted. And I think children in the future, aside from having different perceptions on reality, ultimately we are all working for all of our advancement. It's just the win-win, smartest strategy fathomable. So how one confronts their shadow, Carl Jung had an approach where he's like, you have to, kind of break through the fear barrier and discover new reality. But I would say, for me, I would tell you the way I confronted was my shadow was by having a moment where one morning I was sitting on my porch and I was having a tea. I don't know if it was tea or coffee, but I was having a drink, and for a moment, in my inner realms, which I consider as my private office, something that nothing in the world can touch, believe it or not, but it touches everything in the world as long as I'm animate, In my inner realms, I attempted, like as if imagine it was a homework assignment from your soul to your mind, poetically. I fathomed the worst self I could be. The most evil, chaotic, savage, power blind version of myself. I imagined the worst, and I would even use the word demonic, even worse than that, archetype. And then simultaneously, as I was seeing my worst self beside me, I looked to my right. This is all in my inner realms overlaid on my outer realms, which was the porch. So I was sitting on the porch, and in my inner realms, I perceived my worst self in front of me. And then I perceived my greatest self. And that was such a unique moment, because it was as if I had not taken the time in this lifetime to wonder how great can I be, it was something where no motivational coach could say, only what you noticed in the mirror of life before it was taken away. So I envisioned my worst self and my greatest self standing in front of me, and they were staring at each other as if they were codependent, as if the worst parallel reality and the greatest parallel reality have a relationship with each other which they will never know but are just designed to have, So as my shadow self and my fathoming of the real self, the most enlightened version of myself, as they were looking at each other, for a moment they both looked at me. It was as if, imagine two people looking at each other, and you're the third person looking at those two, and those people suddenly at the same time turn around looking at you. It was as if for a second I realized they were probabilities of the extremes of my life as far as my mind could fathom. Do you understand what I'm saying? That means I in my inner realms, had the sort of, I was like, why not? Let me see what it would look like, the worst self and the greatest self. Then when they both looked at me, I got the powerful insight, at least to me was powerful, that I am neither. And that is I would say, the truth of novelty. The new has no owner. This is why compassion is really the epitome of wisdom. Because the world is wise, You're done being an individual with a long beard, you know what I mean? Even Gandalf at the end of Lord of the Rings was like, all right, I've had enough of this. We should have just sold the ring online, Anyways, guys, the human mind moves in many ways. I'm just trying to tell you that just take me as an example. I'm just trying to give you an honest example of my relationship with my inner realms. They are there. This is not, it's like we think imagination is not real, but that's wrong. Because what is real has design, has shape, and imagination also has design and shape. So we can't say it's 100% real like an object, We can't say a subject is equal to an object, but, you know, a subject has geometry, has an outline. And our attention is cutting the cake, you know. The era of the advanced communicators has begun. It has to be declared, you know. We have to care for opportunities that are out there, really. I mean, I don't know what else. Like, I'm not even saying anything profound. All that I'm saying in these talks, you know, is like, yo, there's this better option. Should we take it or not, you know? You know, and people who in some sense the past defines them, they will always fear the future. You know, there's two ways to enter the future. I would say selflessly or selfishly. If you enter the future selfishly, the past is gonna find you and shake you, right? But if you enter the future selflessly, the past in some sense understand that nature was avoided with, you know. So guys, in the chat section I've written a comment which is noteworthy to say something, so everyone's welcome to ask, you know. And guys, the reason people may be like, how is, you know, Mr. Within so patient, you know, with the listeners, you know, I'll tell you, because as a temporary being, I have concluded the human experience to be the superior treasure. So really, we have to build a civilization that natural human experience is preserved and catalyzed, you know, just advanced. That means we want to have an advanced relationship with nature. We want to have an advanced relationship with technology. We want to have an advanced relationship with language and inner technology, you know. We want to have an advanced relationship with the presence of energy, ultimately. That means just because somebody made the movie of the airbender or whatever, or wizards in ancient, you know, lore were suggested to control the elements, yo, till the end of time, we will have a relationship with energy, you know, and our breathing is really that opportunity. I'm telling you, the breath is like in certain yogic texts, Mahasamadhi was perceived as the person leaving with their breath. That means right now, this breath that we are like, you know, stationed into the elemental. But as we go on living in regards to how sincere and how honest we are, the world that we enter, in some sense, it will be welcomed by grace, or it will be, you know, the shackles of ignorance will be too heavy, right? Because really, the serious is what think of it this way, like there's two types of information, and one information has instant influence and the other information has long-term influence. People will always seek the instant. Why? Because we are afraid of the time running out. And eventually, you know, if I hadn't done it, I'm sure eventually someone on this planet, a child would have been born on this planet if I didn't exist, that would just be like, yo, where is all of this going? And suddenly, you know, it's as if the islet of the advanced civilization lands in the inner realms. I am telling you, it's as if we should not exile the future because we're afraid it changes what the past is to itself. The past is lived. The mind is a hidden sanctuary. Find its source. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll be on Discord for those interested. Namaste.